Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crash Zoom. I'm Sammie Purcell, Associate Editor with Rough Draft Atlanta, and I'm here with Aaron Strand, an indie filmmaker here in Atlanta. How you doing, Aaron?
I am doing great, Sammie. It's a mixed bag, as always, over here. You know, the thing I love about movies, I love a movie that's filled with polar opposites, right? And whenever I'm making a movie, I always try to think about, every scene should be operating in these sort of poles of extremity and shades of light and dark, and that's what really makes good drama. I come here today, I'm slightly slouchier than usual because I have had the worst ankle sprain of my life.
No.
I was being chased by my 3-year-old yesterday when I rolled my ankle, it buckled, I heard something pop. I'm going to get an x-ray done tomorrow. So it's kind of an intense time, but it's also the day that I am announcing that my film Withdrawal is going to have its world premiere here at the Atlanta Film Festival on April 30th at 9 p.m. It's a very big day. I'm very, very excited. I'm sure I'll be talking more about it as we approach, but that's the polar sides that I'm coming to you today. I don't know how it's going to result in this episode. I've got adrenaline pumping, and I've got a lot of pain that I'm managing. So it's good.
You know, you win some, you lose some, but the win sounds better in this case. That's so exciting. That's awesome. I'm so happy. I can't wait to see it. It's on my calendar. Oof.
Yes.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can't wait. I'm so excited to share the film. You know, a lot of times, like, as an artist, you make something and you might feel kind of crunchy about it, or there's things that you wish that you could have done better. And while there's obviously that will always be the case, this one I am really proud of. I'm really excited to share it with this community. I'm so excited for the artists that are mostly Atlanta based that get to come out, celebrate this hometown premiere, and show their work to the broader community. We're going to be in my hometown cinema, so I couldn't be happier. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And April 30th here in Atlanta, Georgia, be there. It's going down at the Plaza Theater.
Don't forget, we will all be there. That's so exciting. Well, if this is your first time joining us for Crash Zoom today, welcome. What Aaron and I like to do here when we're not celebrating personal wins, we discuss the industry news, so film industry news that's going on a bigger picture, and we try to boil down why that matters to the independent artist. And if you listen today and you like what you hear, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube at Crash Zoom Podcast. Be sure to rate and review too. That always helps us out. So before we dive into our topics today, we've got a couple of fun things up here at the top, but we're going to start how we always start. What have you been watching lately, Aaron?
I watched one masterpiece this week, and this is courtesy of our good friends here at Videodrome here in Atlanta. They did their Plaza-drome screenings where they select films to play at the Plaza, and they picked a film from 1997, a Japanese film, Love and Pop, by Hideaki Anno. First of all, it's just so cool to be able to go to a movie theater and see this, respected but relatively obscure film with 300 people showed up at 9 p.m. on a Thursday to watch this movie. It's the first time I'd ever seen it. It's a DV movie. I love DV movies, but this is one of the most inventive, creative, incredible DV movies that I've ever seen. It not only is able to push the bounds of cinema, but at the same time, it retains the joy of discovery. It captures what it means to feel like a teenager, like all over again. I love this movie. I'm a big Anno fan. I'm not a huge anime guy, but Neon Genesis Evangelion is the shit. Shin Godzilla, as I think I've talked about on this show, is my favorite Godzilla of all time. So I'm a huge Anno guy, and he just doesn't miss. I love this guy. I love this filmmaker.
Yeah, I was sad I missed this one, but I'll have to check this out. Sounds really cool. Oh, sad I missed it.
Yeah, what about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I haven't actually been watching that many movies lately, but I did.
So for you, that's only 6 in a week or something?
Well, no.
What is not a lot of movies for Sammie Purcell?
Well, there's some I can't really talk about yet because I'm under embargo, and that happens a lot. But so I watched Evil Dead 2 at the Plaza on Friday.
Great.
One of my favorite movies of all time. It's
Hitter.
so much fun. It was just a
Of
banger.
course.
It was so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
But the reason I haven't been watching a lot of movies lately is because I've been watching a lot of Survivor.
Oh my God.
So me and Cameron has like popped in on, you know, my Survivor watching habits from time to time, but we decided to watch like one from the beginning because he's never done that before. So we're watching season 33, Gen X versus Millennials, which if you've never watched Survivor, it's an all-timer season. It's so good. We've been having a lot of fun with that. And I've also been watching the new season, you know, keeping up with it as it comes out. And I'm Team Mary all the way. That's what I have to say at this moment in time. I too hate looking for things. That's what Mary said.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for this. I mean, a little
Have you
island
never-
talk here at the top.
yeah.
You know,
Have you never taken a dive into the Survivor waters?
No, absolutely not. I don't watch.
I recommend it. It's masterful stuff.
I do. I have Survivor heads in my life, you know, other Survivites, I guess. And I respect the hustle. I respect the grind. I respect the commitment. What season are we at now? 48 or
48. Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
Down to 50. Yeah, 48.
I literally pulled that number out of my. I threw that number out as a ridiculous number.
No, that's
correct.
My
God.
That's 100% correct. Yeah.
Wow.
48. Mm-hmm.
Good God. And you've watched all 48 seasons of this and clearly are rewatching.
I have not watched all 48 seasons. I really only got into Survivor a couple of years ago. My friend from childhood has been like, she's a huge Survivor head. I think she's seen all 48 seasons, but she has like been actively trying to get me to watch this for decades at this point. And I was always sort of like, I have an obsessive personality when it comes to reality TV. I actually can't go down that rabbit hole or I will never come out. And that's exactly what happened. I turned on, actually the first season I watched was Gen X versus Millennials, and it just never came back up. There were tears, there was laughter, there was suspense. Oh
my God.
It's a beautiful time. Survivor's a wonderful game.
I'm happy for you. I am. I'm happy for you. I do hope you get the help you need one day, you know, but
one day,
for now, I hope you have a good time while it lasts.
I will. Team Mary, season 48. I'm predicting it now.
Well, before we even jump into the next topic, I actually have a little update for you.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want to hear it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about what's going on over at Sesame Workshop. So, you know, I have a lot of consternation about the future of Sesame Street. Mm-hmm. And we speculated because for those of you who didn't listen, Sesame Street CEO Sherry Weston, she had to put out a statement basically saying that a large portion of the workforce was let go. And this is because Sesame Street had lost their deal with Max. Now, this was conflicted because a lot of this workforce had just opted to unionize. These are not the puppeteers or the performers, but this is a lot of the administrative staff, a lot of the support staff. They had just unionized through a nonprofit union. And so there was a lot of articles speculating that this unionization was the cause of the firing, and that we even went so far as to speculate that there was actually bad blood within the negotiations between management of Sesame Workshop, and the workforce. Well, I actually have a little insider information. I have an undisclosed source who's a former Sesame Workshop employee who's still in the Facebook group, the Sesame Facebook group, who corrected me that this is actually not the case. In fact, the workers love Sherry Weston. She's a very, very well respected, very, very popular leader. People believe in her. What happened is that this firing was going to have to happen regardless because of they lost the deal with Max. They have no operating budget. They are operating at a fraction of what it costs to actually produce the show. So these firings were going to happen. The union bumped up the unionization announcement in order to try to secure some protections from this, but this was done in coordination with management. Management gave them their blessing with this bump up, and thought that as they're negotiating with, I guess, the powers that be in terms of, because they're somewhat dependent on outside financing, that they would use this as a negotiating tactic. Unfortunately, the people at Max are using their are using their contacts within the press to spin this in a way to paint Sherry Weston as the evil corporate entity disenfranchising workers, when it's in fact the Max people are the ones who are screwing these workers over. They're the ones who are the real managerial class in charge, and the ones who are controlling the work strings. And Sherry is unfortunately getting caught in the crosshairs, and it was a unanticipated, although possibly like predictable outcome of this union announcement move up, but it was not their intention. They didn't see it coming. It's a big mess, and everyone is very upset as to how it's being portrayed in the media. So I just wanted to offer that correction.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I mean, yeah, I guess like the way it's being kind of, at least in the article, I think it was an NPR article that we read. It's kind of that thing where they like can't like say there's a connection because they don't know, obviously, but the timing is weird, right? Like they're like, well, layoffs were announced, and then it was like a day after the union was announced. So they're
Exactly.
like drawing the connection without being able to be like, we know this is exactly why it was, but wow, that sucks. I mean, it all makes it sucks. It sucks even more than it did before, you know? But,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
at least you were. It's a little bit more clear as to sort of if
Sure.
you're going to pick a side and sort of good guys and bad guys here. I mean, I think it's pretty defined that the Sesame Workshop community seems to be pretty united in terms of what they want and what they're all working towards.
Yeah.
And it's once again the wonderful people over at Warner Brothers Discovery that are really the ones who are the bad guys and cutting the strings. I mean, we love the auteur movies. Keep making the auteur movies. But would it kill you to just keep Sesame Street? Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Zaz!
Keep Sesame Street alive. Zaz, I know you listen. Come on.
Yeah. Zaz, I know you gave Alto Nights to your buddy to make a movie with a median creative age of 85. But please, can you do something for the kids to balance it out? You did one for the octogenarians. Do one for the under I don't know what an under 10
The under
genarian
10s.
is.
I don't know what that is either. The under 10s need their stuff too, though. Come on. So let's move on. Before we get into more industry news, Aaron came to me with a little idea last week. It's 2025. It's about 5 years, I think, close to the 5-year anniversary of COVID-19 hitting the world and shutting us down. Not a fun anniversary necessarily, but an anniversary nonetheless.
I mean, it's a life-changing experience. A life-changing experience for all of us that had such profound impacts on this industry. I mean, everything that we talk about was drastically affected by the week of March 14th to March 26th, or not a week, but 2 weeks of March 14th to March 26th. I mean, this was the time that changed all of our lives.
Absolutely. And, because COVID did have such an impact on the movie industry, we thought it would be fun to each pick our top 5 movies since COVID started. So that's what we're going to do. So how did you sort of take this on, I guess? What was your kind of strategy?
Well, I did try to go year by year and try to get some even representation, but ultimately I just picked my favorites. There was a few that I thought were going to be my favorites, but that actually premiered right before COVID. So I did have to cancel some off my list.
Oh my gosh, you're making me double check my one.
Yeah. Well, there's one that I think we probably have in common that if you did put it on, I'm itching to jump out and say it came out before. Anyway, so I've got my 5, but Sammie, I have 8 OLIs. I got 8 outside looking ins that I want to mention here at the top. Do you have any outside looking in honorary mentions of your own?
I have some honorary mentions, yes. So the way I did this was I'm crazy, and I keep letterbox lists of my favorite movies from each year. So I wanted to kind of spread the wealth, of each for each year. So I did one from each year. And I went back and looked at those lists, and I was like, am I going to move some stuff around? And I ultimately did not end up moving anything around. Although I will say for the year 2023, my top 5 is essentially all even. That was a hot year for me. So that was a little more difficult, but I still stuck with my number 1 because that was the first year that I actually made a list for Rough Draft. So I did have to section them out. So I stuck with my number one, but I did a little honorable mention list and just did like the next 3 movies on the list basically from each year. So I also have a lot of honorable mentions.
Okay. All right. Great. I love that. So how about this? I want you to rattle off your honorable mentions. Okay.
Okay.
And so I want you to just list them all off. Don't go into detail about them.
Okay.
Okay. Great. I'm going to pick out like one or two to like either, oh, I love that movie as well. Like, tell me what you love about it. Or if I hear one that I'm just like, what were you thinking, Sammie? I want answers and I want explanations. And then you can do it for me. Okay. So
right.
Honorable mentions. Kick us off here.
Okay. So for 2020, my honorable mentions are Dick Johnson is Dead, which is a documentary. The Old Guard, shout out to Netflix. And Shirley, the one starring Elizabeth Moss. It's about Shirley Jackson. Sorry, I'm giving information about that. You told me not to do it, but here we go. For 2021, my honorable mentions are Teton, which recently played at the Plaza, The Power of the Dog, and Pig, the Nicolas Cage movie. For 2022, my honorable mentions are After Sun, The Fabelmans, and Watcher. For 2023, my honorable mentions are Maestro, Priscilla, and Showing Up. For 2024, my honorable mentions are Anora, Challengers, and A Different Man.
Whoa, Challengers, honorable mention.
Come on, there's an obvious pick, in my opinion, for 2024.
Okay, great. Tell me a little bit about what is it about? Okay, first of all, where do you think Showing Up falls on the Reichardt filmography?
It's really high up there for me.
Really?
Yes, I love Showing Up. If you haven't seen it, it stars Michelle Williams as a woman kind of working in this artist community. I believe in like Portland, maybe it's Oregon or Washington, like somewhere in there. Yeah.
I think it's in Portland.
And I just think it's such a sensitively drawn, really funny movie about making art as a very small independent artist, which we talk about a lot. She makes little figurines. They're kind of like ceramic figures. But I think it's such a powerful and small kind of depiction of what that experience is like and why you do it, even if it ultimately doesn't matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. Michelle Williams is one of my favorite working actresses, and I love all of her sort of team ups with Kelly. She's one of Kelly's gals. I think she's really wonderful in this film, and I love the ending. It has one of my favorite endings of that year, the kind of Casablanca both walking off into the sunset, sort of a beautiful friendship kind of ending. I think my favorite Kelly Reichardt is probably Meek's Cutoff. But Showing Up is very high up there for me. I love that movie.
That's interesting. It's actually a little bit lower on my power ranking of her filmography. I think it was something about the bird and sort of the bird metaphor was a little on the nose for me.
Sure.
And I really
new literalism, if you will.
It was very new literalism. Yeah, it was. Yeah. And some of the magic about so many other films that I love is where the thematic subtext of the movie, it builds to this incredible climax that basically says the theme of the movie in subtextually, which is just one of the most joyful experiences that I can have as a movie watcher. And she delivers that like over and over and over again. And it's almost the way that M. Night Shyamalan has trained you to expect a twist. Kelly Reichardt has trained me to expect the subtextual thematic revelation at the climax of the film. And so this one felt a little bit more on the nose. And so I think that's why it quite didn't hit for me. Now, granted, I've only seen it once and I saw it at home. I didn't see it in a theater. So I will always be down to rewatch. I give her the benefit of the doubt. The issue's probably with me, but as of right now, it's lower on the list. My undefeated number one is still Old Joy. And I don't see anybody knocking it off immediately, but yeah, there we go.
I think what I also, and this happens to me a lot, I think it feels like a very personal film for her, but it's not about a filmmaker, which I really like. Like, I like that it's about making art, but it's about something that is so kind of separate from what she does. I think that's really smart. And I
Yes.
mean, I mentioned The Fabelmans, and I didn't mention this one, but Killers of the Flower Moon is 2023 and kind of falls into that, like, any one of these movies could have made it on to the number one spot this year. It's just a matter of how many great movies came out that year, in my opinion. And that movie also feels like weirdly personal. And obviously, like, The Fabelmans is very personal in an obvious way. but I tend to, like, really gravitate, I think, towards when I can feel like at least, I mean, I don't know if that's what's really coming through, but when I can feel a very personal aspect in the movie making or the story itself, tends to make me feel a little emotional, especially if it's a filmmaker I really like.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's also got Andre 3000, so, like, come on.
Great cast. Incredible cast.
Yeah, he's got to count for a star all on his own.
John Magaro, King of Sundance, he's there.
I mean, how could he not be? How could he
How
not
could
be?
he not be?
It would feel weird. And last thing, the Showing Up does have one of my favorite like, I guess intentionally funny, but sort of so dry lines, which is the first time she shows up to her brother's house and he's like crazy and like digging a hole in the backyard, and she goes, "I didn't know you did earthwork."
She's so great in that movie. I love Michelle Williams in all her iterations, but I think, like, if you are not a Kelly Reichardt fan, you probably have an idea of her as someone who's very bombastic. Whoa.
What?
Sorry, I tapped my earphone and it started playing a podcast.
Oh my god.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
I'm keeping that in for the YouTube.
Okay. But I think if you haven't seen, like, a lot of Kelly Reichardt movies, you probably have an idea of Michelle Williams as a very loud, very extravagant performer. Like, she's like that in The Fabelmans. She's in the miniseries Fosse Verdon, where she plays Gwen Verdon, and that is a very big theatrical performance. But she has such range, like, in all her performances in Kelly movies. She has the ability to be so small and subtle, and she's just wonderful.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. Well, I should have known better than to bring up Kelly Reichardt, because we have gone on for 12 minutes for an OLI mention. It's not even in a top 5. All right, I'm gonna keep this moving here. I'm gonna throw out my OLIs, which is actually pretty funny because I don't think we only have one in common of all of them.
All right.
So these are not labeled by years, but this is just, we're in the 5 years of COVID. Here are my OLIs: Minari, Come On, Vortex, We're All Going to the World's Fair, Kokomo City, Fallen Leaves, Nickel Boys, and Anora.
Okay. Minari and Come On. You hit me right in my chest with both of those. Very close on my list as well. But
I loved both those movies. I think Come On is a real underrated gem.
No one talks about that movie. And I remember being like, this is maybe my favorite, or up there on my list of, like, Joaquin Phoenix performances. He's so regular. It's great. Like, he's just being a guy. I love that movie.
Incredible film, incredible, heartwarming, affirming, but in, like, a real way, not in a saccharine way. Blending of documentary and fiction, everything. If you like everything that people in the new wave were doing, with that sort of blending of cinema verite and actual movies. I mean, it continues all those traditions, but in a modern context, and it's so modern. It's a film that's actually taking place in the real time. Incredible child actor, maybe the best child
Woody
actor
Norman,
since E.T.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh my God. I love that movie. Yeah, incredible film.
It's so good. I'm a big Mike Mills girly, so those always kind of hit for me. But
yeah, totally. Knocks it out of the park.
All right. So mine aren't ranked. I just kind of have year by year. So if yours are ranked, do you want to start at 5 and I'll start at 2020? Or, like, how should we kind of do that?
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, we can do that. Okay. We might end some straight conflicts, but sure. Let's go for it. Okay. My number 5, top 5 movies since COVID. Number 5 is Perfect Days, Wim Wenders. I mean, this movie's amazing. For those who don't know, Wim Wenders was invited by a Japanese friend to make a mini documentary about these, like, architecturally designed toilets in Tokyo. He shows up. He's got some funding in place, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna make a feature film about these toilets." And it turns into just one of the most beautiful character studies that I've seen in a long time. The images from this movie, feelings from this movie, textures from this movie have stuck with me ever since I watched it. Koji Yakusho gives an incredible lead performance in such an understated way. This is very much within the sort of Ozu homage world of filmmaking, very simple stories about normal people experiencing normal emotions that are at the same time existentially, deep and profound. And the way that this movie is written, like, I will study for the rest of my life because it is really just that special. I love this movie.
That's such a great pick. I love all the scenes it's so much about routine, but like all of his moments of getting ready for bed and getting up and his books and like the way his room is set up. The production design in that space is so lovely.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Speaking of normal people experiencing normal emotions, and I just looked this up. This movie did debut at Sundance, but then it came out theatrically on March 13th. So I'm going to say it counts in 2020.
Whoa, that's a tough. Okay, let's
be
go
real.
for it.
COVID was already a thing in January of 2020.
I mean, well, sure, it's COVID-19. March 13th. I don't know if it was released theatrically before the theaters shut down. Are we gonna let this slide through, Sammie?
I really think we should, because March 13th, those movies still never had a shot. And this movie probably never had a shot anyway in theaters. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, what is it?
It's Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always from Eliza Hittman.
Because I was convinced you were going to say First Cow. I was convinced you were going to say First Cow, which I think came out on like March 10th.
Yes.
Or something like that.
I think so, something like that.
Yeah,
but,
which I disqualified from my list. For the record, some of us play by the rules. Okay, go ahead.
Whatever. So this movie is from Eliza Hittman. It stars Sydney Flanagan and Talia Ryder. It's about a young woman traveling from Pennsylvania to New York to get an abortion. It rings for me as a COVID movie. I did watch it at home. I think it must have been one of the first ones to like kind of immediately go to streaming. Like they were like, uh-oh. Fuck this. Let's just like put it on somewhere where people can see it. And it's just the kind of movie that really sneaks up on you. I think the titular scene kind of refers to an exchange that Sydney Flanagan's character is having at an abortion clinic. She's being asked to answer a couple questions, and she has to answer them as never, rarely, sometimes, always. Like those are her answers. And it's just a really, really affecting, sneaky, the way like the tension drives up and the emotion of it builds is so thoughtfully paced. This movie is shot almost like it feels very like a documentary. Talia Ryder, I think, is lights out. She gives such a good supporting performance. I believe she plays Sydney Flanagan's cousin who's traveling with her to New York. There's a lot of bleakness in this movie, but I think there's also a lot of hope in these really, really tiny kind of micro small moments, particularly between the two kind of young women at its center. This movie has stayed with me for a while since I last saw it.
Yeah, so I have not watched this film. I remember the promo coming up to it. I had also just watched I think it's Hungarian movie, 4 weeks, 3 days and 21 hours or something. Like I'm totally butchering the name, but it's another sort of abortion access that was within the context of communism.
There were a lot that were coming out around that time. I think Unpregnant isn't far after that. Like there were a couple of movies that were coming out kind of about that subject, but
yeah. So, but I remember watching that film and it's sort of like thinking that or pretty sure that I was going to come see this movie, and then things happened and I didn't make it to the theater. So
sure.
still on the watch list, but I'm a huge Talia Ryder fan, and I look forward to watching it, and unfortunately only more prescient as time goes by. So
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number 4?
Okay, yes. Number 4. This one is from 2020. And this is a lovely entry from one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. I'm going with heavy hitters here, obviously with Wim Wenders, and coming in with Thomas Vinterberg's Another Round. I loved Another Round. I thought it was super fun. As someone who has struggled with addiction and with drinking. The way that the subject matter was gamified in this really inventive way and this really gut-wrenching way, but that it like wasn't a traditional addiction narrative, I thought was so cool. Some of the like classic Danish actors that I've watched from all the like Dogma movies in the 90s appeared here in older roles. So that's always really cool. And Mads Mikkelsen is just fantastic in this film. He gives just such a compelling performance. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched it since. It was just a one and done, but I remember just hit it in coming to the end of the film and was like, wow, I think that might be my favorite Vinterberg since The Celebration. That was just a knock out of the park. And then, oh my God, there was those rumors that they were going to do an American
I was about to bring that up. I think Leo was attached.
Yeah, well, yeah, or that's what the rumors were. Thank God that pile of dog shit never made it to the screen.
I feel like they literally immediately were like, never mind. Like it was just like, ooh, let's capitalize in it. Like I think it won Best International Feature at the Academy Awards. Like they were like, ooh, jump on that. And then it feels like immediately everyone was like, no, that doesn't sound like a good idea, actually.
Yeah,
I don't know if I need
God.
the American version of this. Yeah.
No, it's perfect in its Danish form. Also, another little feature of that film, it's one of the few films that I've ever seen handle modern text messaging in such a cool way, because it basically shows text messages as silent film intertitles.
Oh yeah,
and
I do remember that.
I loved that touch. I will probably steal that one day. So much more compelling and better than the sort of chirons and all these other goofy things that people do to try to filmify text messaging. And that was just such like a classic, elegant way to do it. It was used to incredible effect, and just a really, really lovely touch from a very, very skilled filmmaker.
Awesome. All right, I have a feeling this one is gonna cause you to feel negatively towards me because I've seen your Letterboxd rating of it, but here we go.
Oh no.
My pick for 2021 is
I know what it is. Oh no.
It's David Lowery's The Green Knight.
Oh, I knew it. Oh my God, explain yourself.
Okay. So this is based on the Arthurian legend, Gawain and the Green Knight, a staple of every high school classroom at this point, or at least it was when in my day, I feel like. I found this to be, I'm not a big David Lowery person. I guess I should say that going forward. I don't love a ghost story. I've just never, he's never really stuck with me. I feel like I've always been kind of more appreciative rather than I like this. And this was one of the first movies that I saw back in a theater. We were all masked up. I think it was summer of 2021.
God.
And I found it to be such a confident movie about a text that has so many conflicting interpretations. And it was so happy to like live in those weird contradictions. Like, is Gawain a Christ-like figure? Is he a failure? Is a knight's code, is a knight's honor something to honor, something to appreciate, or something to be laughed at and scorned? I just loved how it approached those contradictions and felt so confidently able to give them all to you and let you, the audience, figure it out. Like it didn't over-explain. It didn't, I guess, feel the need to leave you with a solidified answer. And I feel like a legend like this, something that is so open to your interpretation, that's a good way to approach that material, I guess. I thought it was so filled with mysticism, like it wasn't stale. There are so many images in it, and I haven't seen it in quite some time that I just don't think I'll ever get out of my head. That sort of 360 turn where Gawain turns into a skeleton. Take that look off your face, all right? The giants, I just really, it has stuck with me in such a fun way. I found it so immersive, so fun. I think Dev Patel is wonderful in it. Like, he's so good at showing, the contradictions within himself, those big old brown eyes. He's just great. And this movie has really sat with me. I love it. I'm not going to apologize for it.
No one's asking you to apologize.
Your
clearly,
face is.
No, I'm just listening. I'm listening. I wouldn't say with an open heart, but I'm listening with a heart. And I'm happy that you found joy in this. That's the beauty of art, is it's open to interpretation. One woman's masterpiece is another man's just masturbatory exercise in.
Come on.
I really find Lowry as a filmmaker. I just think it's all sizzle, no steak, like across the board. This movie of all the films that I've seen in the last 5 years, I can't think of one that lost me faster as
That's
an audience
so wild.
member. I just remember, because obviously I haven't gone back and rewatched it. I remember being lost within 10 minutes of this film, just thinking, oh God, how much time is left? I have to sit through this. And of course, many times you can experience that in a film, and you stay in it to and it will win you over in the end. And it's revealed to you that you were in fact wrong. This one just didn't do that to me. It didn't deliver. And for me, and I found it to be, sort of just a ridiculous exercise in genre that I didn't need to have in my life. And I hated every minute of it. I truly despised every minute of this film. I mean, look, I have, as we've talked about before, I have a lot of respect for Dev Patel. I love him in so many other things. This one is for someone else. And I'm glad that someone else is
me.
you.
Yeah, I love this movie. I think it rocks. Arthurian legends should be mystical and weird. And this movie's fucking weird. I love it.
Well, speaking of weird movies that I fucking love, and this is like more just like a little bit weird, but the little weird twists really, I think, elevate this film into a masterpiece, is my number three film from the years of COVID. For number 3 for me is from 2022. That would be Todd Field's Tar. I love Tar.
Lydia Tarr, the person. Do you think she's a good person? I'm kidding.
No. She's a misunderstood person. I thought this film was fantastic. I mean, I love stories about classical music in general. I love that sort of like world building. Definitely sort of lineage of The Piano Teacher, which is like one of my all-time favorite movies. And this film was just so creepy and cool. And I watched this at home. This is the only time that I know of where the home watching experience, because the shadows lurking in the corners, I didn't realize until late in the viewing. And I was able to pause my Apple TV, rewind, rewatch. See the
scary girl in the corner?
And literally just think like, oh my God, like this is crazy. That's like I'm getting like the hair on the back of my neck is standing up just talking about it. And so that's one way where like the home viewing experience actually made a magical movie moment for me. I'll never forget, carving out the night to like watch this film, the 3 hours that it would take like here at my house and on the television. And it's always a very, very memorable home viewing experience, when a lot of home viewing experiences just kind of become lost in the sauce. So Tar. Are you a Tar fan?
I'm a Tar fan. I also think what's underrated about Tar is how funny it is. Like, I am Petra's father. I think about that twice a week. It's so funny. I was like, well, that's her award campaign right there. That's the clip you got to play. I am Petra's father. Just, muscling down a 10-year-old girl. That's Cate Blanchett.
Yes. Also,
I really like
the
Tar
ending
a lot.
The ending rips. That ending is awesome.
It's very good.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many stupid think pieces about like, what does the ending mean? It's just like, can you just experience it and then like think about it for 2 seconds and like that's just what it means. I mean, come on. So yeah.
All right. Speaking of
what about
musicians,
what year are we in for you? We're in
2022. We're in 2022.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And speaking of musicians, my favorite movie of 2022 was The Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh my God, Sammie, we are very different movie watchers.
We are, apparently. I love this movie. It was honestly a little bit of similar thing to Lowry. I've been a little out on Martin McDonagh's recent work, but I think what really grabbed me about this movie is, I think, one, great premise right off the bat. So if you haven't seen it, it takes place in 1923 Ireland, and a fictional island. The Irish Civil War is happening, but something much more scathing is happening on a personal level on that island, Aaron. And it's that Brendan Gleeson woke up one day and decided he didn't want to be friends with Colin Farrell anymore. So there's that. And I remember like seeing the trailer and being like, well, that's just a great premise. Like, I just don't like you very much. I don't want to be friends with you anymore. I was grabbed. And then I think what this movie really captures for me is it's a pretty interesting, I don't want to say scathing, I don't know if that movie has this in it, but kind of dark look about legacy and talent, I think. You have Brendan Gleeson on one side. So part of the reason he sort of cuts Colin Farrell off from his life is he finds him uninteresting, not stimulating, as Guy Pearce might say in The Brutalist. And he's striving for greatness. You know, he's a fiddle player. He wants to be a great musician. He has kind of these ideations about becoming the next Mozart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have him sort of coming to this realization throughout the movie that he's not as good as Mozart. He will never be Mozart, whether that's for lack of talent or opportunity or wherever it might be. And then on the other side, you have Colin Farrell, who's, you know, has never really realized that he should feel bored or lonely or frustrated. He's a nice guy. He's maybe not the smartest guy. And this interaction, this sort of experience he has with Brendan Gleeson, his friend cutting him off, and his reasonings for cutting him off, kind of awakens him to like the awful loneliness of human life and existence, I think in a really sad way. So this movie I thought was very funny, and then it just like kind of hit me like a gut punch with how sad it was at the end.
Wow. Man, I gotta be honest. I don't hold back, Sammie. I hated this movie. I hated this movie. And I hated this movie. I hated this movie because I should like this movie. That's how I felt. Like
That's how I felt about Bullet Train.
Oh, well, Bullet Train. We can just, that can go to the waste bin of time. But this movie, everything about the premise is conceivably good, but I hated the execution about this. I didn't think it was funny. I felt like all the jokes were designed for the worst kind of art house crowd, the kind of people that don't know how to belly laugh, you know, the kind of people that only sit in a theater and they go, huh. And, you know, because they realize that a joke is supposed to be funny and they do this sort of self-satisfied, huh. That's what this movie felt like to me. It was one big self-satisfied, huh. I thought the whole talk about new literalism, the fact that they were watching the Civil War play out on the mainland while they were clearly like living out a metaphor for it, I thought was ridiculous. I so much would have rather the Civil War like have really been happening off screen. And and then just all the little jokes. And then what's the young actor's name that everyone loves?
Barry Keoghan.
Barry Keoghan. I can't stand him. I really can't. I
think this is one of his better performances. He's not just doing the Barry Keoghan thing. He's doing something different.
Yeah, but like he can't help it, and all of his performances always feel incredibly self-aware to me. I don't ever feel I always see I see the actor, I see the performance, I don't see a character. I see a try-hard, and I just don't gravitate towards him. Again, he's just for somebody else. I had an experience with Martin McDonagh as a young man. I was in New York. I was 16 years old, and I got to go see The Lieutenant of Inishmore on Broadway, which was like a defining artistic experience of my life. It's this incredibly bloody, violent, funny play, and I saw it at the absolute perfect time. It was the only time a play has like really, I mean, it's like a top 5 theater experience of my life, and I cherish that memory so deeply in my mind. And Martin McDonagh, unfortunately, nothing he has ever made has lived up to that experience. And so in some ways, he's also a victim of like the imagination I have of him in my own head. But this one for me was a real disappointment. All my friends loved it. I went into it with high expectations. It did not deliver. Banshees of Inisherin, you are for somebody else. And
somebody else for Sammie. I don't really get the self-satisfied part of it at all, but that's fine.
I think that type of comedy, like the type, like, did you laugh during this movie?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Did you really laugh?
Why would I lie about that? What do I gain by lying?
No. I just was curious about the quality of the laughter. That's all. Was it a hearty laugh? Was your diaphragm engaged?
Watcher. I don't think it's the type of movie to make your diaphragm engaged, but I laughed. Like, it's not like The Hangover. Like,
well, maybe we need to do a rewatch together. Maybe your laughter will inspire me, or I will, I'll like a crowd in a comedy club. I'll sort of be warmed up to this experience. Yeah. Sitting alone. Let me tell you this. I talk about, like, if we go from Tar being a wonderful home viewing experience, this was a miserable home viewing experience for me. Absolute bottom of the barrel. Maybe if I watched it in a theater, I would have liked it better.
I did see it in a theater, but this was around the time I was starting to review stuff, so I was seeing a lot of stuff in theaters. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. Moving on. This is my number 2. This is my second best movie of the COVID years, or the post-COVID years, and this was my first movie of I'm gonna put on a mask and go out to a theater because I have to see this movie in a theater. This is from 2021 with Joachim Trier's The Worst Person in the World. I was waiting in anticipation for this movie for so long. I love Joachim Trier. Oslo, August 31st is a masterpiece. When I saw it, it just blew my mind. It also stars Anders Danielsen Lee. I love all these, like, Nordic guys, like, they're just like my guys. And then going to see this one, it really felt like a revelation. I love it's beautiful. Renata Rinsby is amazing. It's funny, it's poignant, it's super modern. Everything that I like about movies, it just was, like, rolled up in this, like, total package. Worst Person in the World. Amazing film.
This was one that I liked this movie. I actually, for my birthday, I think my birthday would have been the December before the January, because it played at Sundance, I believe. My friend got me, like, 2 tickets for, like, virtual Sundance. So we both got to, like, pick one, and we watched it together. She was in Boston at the time, I think. And this was one of the ones we picked. They were playing it virtually. And I've only ever seen it that way, and it might have been, again, like a theater thing. I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I felt like maybe my expectations were a little too high because I'd heard so many people, like, ranting and raving about it at that point. I remember thinking, and it's one I would love to give another shot because I did like it, and I really liked the performances. But I remember thinking, like, and I don't like putting criticism into this box, especially when the movie is clearly about so much more than this. But I remember thinking there was, like, a little bit of, like, weird kind of, like, feminism in it that I couldn't tell if it was a joke or not. Like, there's some joke she makes about, like, oh, if, like, men had periods, there'd be, like, tampons in every corner or whatever. And I remember thinking, like, that feels very 2012. And I couldn't tell if the movie was, like, making a commentary on that type of thing or not. But again, it's been a while, so I'd like to give it another shot. But
and you found that, like, dated and distasteful. Did it
not
bring you into the sort of,
but just, like, a little dated? Like, that's something we all used to say when, like, you know what I mean, 10 years ago. But
did it bring up sort of, like, male director, female story type of vibes?
A little bit, but the movie is not so baked. Like, it's not so much about that type of thing that it didn't, like, stick for me that much. It was just something I kind of, like, I remembered, like, having a little, like, that kind of pinged. And then it's been, like, a long time. But once it kind of moved on from that, I was like, okay, I'm back into this. But
I thought that very much was describing, like, this character, this young woman moving through those early years and, like, grasping to these sort of not very deep ideas to sound deeper than you are type of thing.
No, and I guess at the time, and again, this is why I'd like to watch it again, when I was watching it first time, I couldn't tell, like, how deep that criticism was of her, I guess. That makes sense. But again, it was one I watched on my laptop in my bedroom because that was how I was able to see it. So
yeah. Well, I'm truly shocked that we have gone through 5 years of movies. We've each listed off like over 10 films, and we do not have a single one in common. My God, what is going on here?
That's good podcasting, baby.
Baby. So what do you got for 2023? Hit me with it.
Okay, for 2023, I have a movie that was really just like soundly left out of any awards consideration that year. Very strange to me. And that's part of why I picked it, because again, this is the year. Could have gone a lot of different ways. But that's Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. So this is it's kind of a weird movie to explain the plot of. It's like a fictionalized, televised retelling of the making of a fictional play, cut with scenes from the fictional play. But basically the bulk of it that you need to know is what that fictional play is about. The play is called Asteroid City. And essentially, a bunch of people come to a small desert town for a youth astronomy convention, and they experience a supernatural / astronomical event that sort of changes their lives. I've always been a Wes Anderson girly, and this is pretty up there for me in the Wes Anderson rankings. I think it's one of the better examples of how his stylistic approach is substantive. There's always like people out there who are like, oh, Wes, all style, no substance. And I remember around the time this movie was coming out, it was right when those like, if Harry Potter was directed by Wes Anderson, things were starting to like pop up on TikTok and social media and stuff. And it was just like doing Harry Potter within kind of the Wes Anderson aesthetic. And that stuff feels so soulless to me, and his movies do not feel soulless. And I think the way this movie kind of digs into ideas about creation and the unknown, and about like, it's really about, what am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? What is this whole thing about? It's about uncertainty. And I think that theme paired with his specificity and style makes for a very interesting watch. And also made me cry a little bit. I really liked this movie.
Oh wow, that's an accomplishment. Something that you don't normally think of or at least I don't normally think of a Wes Anderson film. Like you're gonna go in and cry.
I have always, it's like I'm fine. The fact that he doesn't like hit kind of emotionally for a lot of people, I totally get it. But something about like Royal Tenenbaums kind of makes me cry. Moonrise Kingdom kind of got me to feel, something about whatever he's doing just kind of hits me sometimes.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. Well, I didn't see it, so I have nothing negative or positive to say. I've been a kind of take it or leave it Wes Anderson person. I've seen a handful, but I would not profess to be an expert or anything. I'm sure I'll see it eventually, but your endorsement definitely will probably push up that date rather than push it back. So
nice.
Nice. Asteroid City. Okay. Well, is it time for my number one and your number 2024?
Yes, it is.
Oh man, what a weird countdown. Okay. My number one, and as soon as I introduced this exercise, I knew this was going to be my number one, and I tried to entertain, was I going to mix it up? And there was really like nothing that came close. This is my favorite film since the COVID-19 pandemic, and that would be Davy Chow's Return to Seoul from 2022. I love everything about this movie. This is like, this is a perfect movie to me. Again, I mean, I'm like, I know this about myself, and yet it's also like, I'm kind of discovering it as we do this podcast, like modern setting, in-depth character study, the kind of twists and turns that really make you not know where it's going. This film utilizes extreme time jumps in a way that I've never really seen before. Jimin Park, who has never acted before, she's a visual artist, and like Davy Chow had to like convince her to be in this movie, gives a tour de force performance in this film. It's a story of self-discovery, of discovery of identity, of the discomfort with your identity, running away from yourself. What does that actually look like? Hurting people as a way to like hide yourself from yourself. I mean, all these like things that I really relate to, even though in this case it's this like French Korean girl, young woman. But I was like right there with it. I felt like her. And the film also does something magical that I've started to notice like more and more in films recently, which is that it does this incredible downshift in the final act. So it's like pretty high paced, pretty intense. There's like some pretty intense situations, really twisty and turny, don't know where it's going. And then the final act just like throws it back into first gear, and you kind of crawl to the finish line with her. And it's a very disconcerting experience. It's a very uncomfortable experience upon first watch, but it actually like gives you the space to sit with the character and realize subtextually what sort of conclusion they've arrived to for this chapter of their life. And this is the first film that I saw really effectively do that like 2020 downshifting, which I would say Anora does as well.
Yeah.
And it does this incredible downshift in such an effective way. I love soundtrack's amazing. Everything about this movie is amazing. It looks amazing. It feels amazing. Return to Seoul. I love you. #1.
I haven't seen this movie since the first time I watched it, but I really, really liked it. I was a big fan, so I'm right there with you. I don't have too much else to say because I can't remember like too many specifics, but I remember.
Oh man,
really
didn't make the list though. Didn't make the list.
Didn't make the list. Sorry. All right. So my 2024. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I feel like we've talked about it so much. It's Nickel Boys. That was my favorite movie of 2024.
There we have one. We have one in common.
Yeah. Ramel Ross's adaptation of Colson Whitehead's novel, a shot in POV to, I think, stunning effect. It's just a wonderful film. I think, adapting a book like The Nickel Boys, Colson Whitehead's book, is so difficult, especially with how deftly that book is written. And I think Ramel Ross does a wonderful job. Incredible cinematography by Jomo Frey, just like completely snubbed by the Oscars. I don't really understand, but whatever. Yeah, I love this movie. I think it's one that I think it's going to be really influential, kind of like low key on a lot of indie filmmakers. At least I hope it is.
So?
At least in terms of like, just that like you can kind of take chances. Like I feel it was so interesting talking to Ramel Ross because I feel like, you listen to people talk about this movie and there's always this discussion of like, how did you convince someone to let you do this, et cetera, et cetera. And when I talked to him, he was sort of like, well, no one ever told me no. Like I just kind of said, this is how I'm going to do it. And everyone was like, okay. So I don't know. I guess I hope it influences people in the sense that you can make kind of wild choices that perhaps not everybody, not a general audience will kind of get, and it'll be fine. And your movie will be cool and all the better for it.
Yeah, agreed. Love it. Well said. Okay, well, those are our favorite movies since the world shut down. Wow, what a trip down memory lane that was.
What a trip.
Yeah, and I originally pitched out that it was going to be top 5 because, we had other topics to get to. We're about an hour in total.
I was going to say.
So, crushing it. But I still think we should move on and hit some of these, hit what's going on in the news this week.
All right, so let's get into this. So if you've been following the news, I'm not going to give a headline here because the information, at least that I got about this one, comes from a lot of different places. I was looking at a Deadline article from Dominic Patton and Will Goldsmith. There's an article in The Verge from Emma Roth, and I also looked a lot at the Daily's newsletter. So essentially, if you've been paying attention to what's going on in our government right now, OpenAI and Google are sort of pushing the Trump administration to allow their AI models to train on copyrighted material. So they sent proposals in that are asking for this based on the White House asking different organizations for input on President Trump's AI action plan. That came to fruition in one of his many executive orders. And the AI action plan aims to, quote, sustain and enhance America's global AI dominance. There's a lot of China fear-mongering going on in this one right here. But essentially, OpenAI claims that allowing AI companies to access copyrighted content would help the U.S. avoid forfeiting its lead to AI in China. Google agrees. And it should come as no surprise. Hollywood is, at least Hollywood individuals, companies TBD, I guess, but Hollywood individuals are acting a little differently than OpenAI and Google. So this comes from a Deadline article, that Deadline article I mentioned at the top. A ton of famous people, Paul McCartney, Ava DuVernay, I won't go through all the names, but basically over more than 400 entertainment industry power players have signed an open letter to the Trump administration asking them to hold the line when it comes to AI and tech companies' desire to weaken copyright rules. So we've been talking about AI and copyright on this podcast for quite some time. And I think, you made a prediction kind of considering how AI would sort of play out this year. And I think that prediction is still kind of coming to fruition. It's the wild, wild west out here. This conversation over copyright could stretch in and will probably stretch into 2026. The White House is reviewing submissions and courts are still tackling lawsuits that we've discussed on this podcast, like New York Times versus OpenAI, like still waiting for those precedents to be set. This is just going to be an ongoing battle, it seems. There's really no end in sight, or at least not till next year, probably.
Yeah, this is definitely the most aggressive use from OpenAI and Google, arguing that the use of copyright material from their algorithms and their AI learning machines is falls under fair use. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to note that in the lobbying of the government, the other major player in this, Anthropic, does not cite fair use as their justification of why they should do this. And I think that this is a big shift in the sort of tactics being used by these giant corporations. And it was also AI has always hidden its profit-seeking motives under the auspices of scientific research, but this was something that was once again hit upon by Google in particular, justifying that we needed to do this for research, as if this is not all some sort of money-making endeavor to consolidate power. This is a blatant and shameless, craven attempt to destroy 2 centuries of American copyright law by OpenAI and Google, and to bring untold amount of creative capital under essentially oligarchic control. You brought up the Chinese Communist Party fear-mongering. I mean, it really reminded me of a quote that Dan Carlin uses quite a bit. It's often misattributed to Hitler. It's actually a British scientist observing the rise of fascism in Europe in the 1930s, and he is quoted as saying, "The great strength of the totalitarian state is it forces those who fear it to imitate it." This is what they are lobbying our government to do, that in order to compete with a totalitarian CCP, we have to use their same tactics. It's terrible. It's terrible what's happening.
Yeah, and there's a quote in this Deadline article kind of talking about the arguments of creators who signed the letter from Hollywood, or Hollywood, quote unquote, arguing that revenue streams that these companies are looking for are already present in copyright law. This would just be kind of a government exemption so they can exploit America's creative knowledge and those industries. And it's something they don't need, right? Like, they have revenues and available funds. Like, they have other avenues. This is just like a quick fix and a quick jump in the obstacle, I guess I should say.
Yeah. I mean, this thing about fair use, like, really, really hit home to me, because in some of my more experimental film work, I've had to really read a lot about and learn a lot about fair use and sort of what I can and can't use. And so it's something that really hits close to home. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what fair use means and why their argument might, in a casual reading of the sentence, make sense, but under the surface is bullshit. Okay? Fair use copyright law is basically the idea that you can take a piece of somebody else's material and then alter it in some way or comment on it in some way, and it's not, you can't be sued for that use. It's not in breach of the original creator's copyright. Okay? And this isn't designed to balance sort of the rights of creators with the public's interest, and that we should be able as a public to enjoy the culture that is all around us, and then to comment on it and tweak it and incorporate little bits of it into our own creative endeavors. Now, that doesn't mean that you take, an entire Disney movie, put it on your YouTube channel with a different name and say, well, fair use, I can post this Disney movie. That's not how fair use works. And I actually I was curious, so I went to ChatGPT and I just said, tell me the key factors of fair use. Like, what is fair use law? and I know people do this with Grok all the time whenever Elon says, whatever stupid thing is coming out of that South African's mouth at any given point in time. And they go to his AI machine and say, "Is this true?" And it says, "No, of course that's not true." Well, I know these arguments don't really matter, but I asked ChatGPT to describe what is fair use. So there's a few points that it brought up. So number one, purpose and character of the use. So it is used to be transformative, to add new meaning, expression, or message. In this case, like they're correct by using other people's material to train their AI models. Like there will be a transformative element. Okay. Is it for commercial or nonprofit educational purposes? Okay, this is where we're already like way far afield. Okay, This is clearly for commercial purposes. Okay, nonprofit educational research and commentary uses are most likely to be considered fair use, not commercial enterprises like ChatGPT and Google. Okay. Up next, number two major point, the nature of the copyrighted work. Okay, is the original work factual or creative? Okay, this is why you can pretty much use any clip from a news broadcast anywhere, and you cannot be targeted for fair use infringement. Okay, fair use is far more likely to apply to factual works, for example, news and research, rather than highly creative works. Okay, point number three, amount and sustainability of the portion used. And here's the biggest part for me, that why their argument is such bullshit. Okay, how much of the original work is used? There's a rough rule in filmmaking that like you can really get away with like 10 to 12 seconds tops of using a clip from someone else's show before they can argue, that's actually doesn't fall within fair use. Look, fair use is a gray area. It always has been, but we're talking 10 to 12 seconds here. Okay, using a small portion is far more likely to be considered fair use, but if the heart of the work is taken, it may not even qualify. Even if you use the 12 seconds, that's like the very heart of the novel or the film or the music or whatever, it might not qualify for fair use. So these people want unfettered access to all of it. Automatic disqualification. And finally, number four, the effect on the market. Does the use harm the original work's market or potential value? Now, I think you could argue, well, you could feed all of T.S. Eliot poems into ChatGPT. That doesn't mean that ChatGPT is going to like become the new T.S. Eliot, so that wouldn't harm its potential value. Well, it's a lot of the research that's coming out where it's showing these disturbing trends of people actually favoring AI poetry rather than human written poetry when it's devoid of their author's title. Like people are being shown passages of T.S. Eliot and then shown passages created by ChatGPT, and by and large, they're preferring the ChatGPT ones. Now, I think this probably has more to do with our overall literacy and poetry knowledge as a society. However, I think that this absolutely demonstrates that it has a real profound market effect. And when it gets to sort of like more popular entertainments and music and film, it is really, really bad. So even by ChatGPT's own definition, their claims of fair use do not stand up.
I don't know how in the world you could argue that it doesn't harm the copyright holders market. Like, in what world, like, what would the argument be for that?
I guess in the sense that it's like, well, a lot of those copyright holders have already produced these works, so we're not going to like recreate the masterworks of the past, but you can certainly like reframe your menu in the voice of Raymond Chandler.
Okay. This is something that we'll definitely keep following. This, again, like I said, this is going to stretch on into the next year and probably the year after that. I'm really interested to see what the outcome will be of this New York Times lawsuit. I cannot find any updates. I think someone filed a motion to dismiss in January, but there's been no real update on that, at least that I've seen as of the recording of this podcast. But I think that will be like just an absolute, like, I mean, obviously it's going to be a landmark case at this point, but I think whenever comes out of that will be really, really important to all of this, obviously.
Well, I think the most scary thing is that these entities are looking to curry favor with an over-empowered executive branch that has snatched too much power. And that's not just a Trump issue. I mean, he's the one who's taking advantage of it, but the executive branch in this country has taken more and more power over the last 80 years. They are appealing to that directly for some sort of carte blanche executive order, some sort of extra legal protection for what they're doing. And this is so disturbing because it gets to the very core problem. I mean, this is like such a philosophical issue, and it's one of the things that disturbs me most, which is that like always the great appeal of totalitarianism and authoritarianism and autocrats is that they are incredibly efficient. You know, in China, Xi Jinping says, do this, and they do it. It's an incredibly efficient system. And by comparison, democracy feels very clunky and very slow and very, you got to battle it out for years and years and years. But it's the difference between short-term gains and long-term gains. We are losing the fact the system is literally designed to account for humans' individual short-sightedness, and that by actually fighting things out over years, we become more resilient to them in the long run. And by so the way that technology has warped our brains and our perceptions to expect a sort of immediate gratification from all things in life, it's no wonder that people are finding totalitarianism more attractive now than ever before, because it delivers those same fast results that a computer does. But this is not good for the long term, because eventually that leader that's making dictates, like, they're going to do dumb shit, and they're going to do dumb shit that hurts you and your family. Well, I mean, look, I'm just saying, like, even if you have the most enlightened philosopher king, they're eventually going to do dumb stuff. And without the checks and balances that we are supposed to have in this country, that I still believe do exist in some shredded, imperfect form, we are losing out on this. And the notion that these AI companies are selling, that they could somehow export this iterative process into their black box of a commercially controlled computer and out of the hands of artists, or I'm sorry, out of the hands of people, in this specific regard, we're talking about creative work, that is a ridiculous, terrible claim. They just want to control everything, and they just want all of our money. Yeah. It is such a craven power grab that is so in the face of everything this country is supposed to stand for. It's disgusting. I hate it.
Yeah, they don't want to have to pay anyone for whatever they need. They want to work around. That's it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of tech companies. So this article is from Puck. It's written by Matt Bellany himself. We've talked about him a lot on this podcast, I feel.
Daddy Matt.
It's called What Does Apple Really Want from Hollywood? So we're talking about Apple TV there. Apple, the company, obviously does a lot more important things. Spoiler alert, it just got an iPhone 16. Thanks, Apple. It works a lot better than my 13.
Oh, nice. Look at you.
Look at me. But that's not the point of this conversation. So this article is essentially trying to figure out what the current state of Apple, the company, means for its entertainment business. Just a couple of kind of bullet points on the state of Apple currently. They had a 13% stock drop off this month. They've been having a lot of problems with the AI features for iPhones. So, I mean, I don't really need much of that, but those features were pushed to 2026, and they've actually been sued, I believe, for deceptive marketing tactics. So they used AI innovations in an ad before they actually existed. They're being sued for it now. And the whole article is essentially just trying to get at, like, what does this mean for the state of Apple TV, essentially, their streaming service? And, you know, Apple Entertainment, like, entertainment-wise, Apple TV has never, at least from my view, been like a big money-making endeavor. But on the other hand, I have really appreciated the things that they've made. I think there are some really great, well-made, high-quality TV shows and movies that end up on Apple TV. Severance, I'm a real big For All Mankind head. They're giving Martin Scorsese $1 bajillion to make Killers of the Flower Moon, and it doesn't make any money, you know? But the thing that's happening here, at least in my view, and Mike Bellany goes into this in the article itself, the marketing is so bad. He has this great quote in here where he says, quote, "Hugely expensive movie star-driven TV shows regularly land with little awareness or presumably viewers. Did you know Natalie Portman, Colin Farrell, Michael Douglas, Billy Crystal, and Warren Beatty all made shows for Apple this past year? They did. Well, except Warren Beatty. I made that one up, but you believed it because it sounds like someone Apple would work with," end quote. And I think that's a really great sort of like, I mean, there's a ton of other stuff in this article that we can get into, but I like that quote because it's such a good encapsulation of, like, you hear all those names and you think high quality stuff, and I'm sure a lot of it is high quality stuff, but I've never heard of any of it. And I don't understand the marketing strategy even one little bit. I just don't get it.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think it's the core issue with the way that Apple tries to bring their tech business into entertainment. The way that the services division, which is where the Apple TV falls under, and communicates with the marketing division, there's some clear internal just miscommunication. There's just something is not clicking here between the two of them to get the word out. And I think they've sort of relied on some almost a naive belief that word of mouth happens organically, which is like, you guys are the world's largest company, and literally the definition of tech. You should know better than to think that that organic word of mouth is like really a thing, or like is a thing that you can rely on or control. I mean, it happens, but most of these like organic word of mouth campaigns are highly orchestrated and paid for algorithmic experiences that a populace is like put upon by very powerful tech and marketing companies. So I don't know. I mean, you let off in the rundown, you know, like what is Apple doing with its TV service? I have no idea. I don't know what they're doing. I think I keep going back to the failure of the Apple Vision Pro. I mean, Apple's overall problem right now is that they cut their teeth as this incredibly innovative hardware company, and they haven't come up with an innovative piece of hardware, you know, since AirPods, you know, and the Vision Pro that was even sort of like a fluke that they just sort of happened into. They've never even come close to rivaling the iPhone. I'm not sure you can. That's probably the most, you know, world-changing invention of our lifetime, but you know, I thought the Vision Pro was their attempt to kind of get back onto the cutting edge of that space, and it just failed on so many levels. You know, I was hopeful that piece of hardware was going to somehow become desirable enough that you would want to experience their original entertainment within this sort of like new way of experiencing film. And it just didn't work out that way. It was clunky. It was goofy. It was not sexy. And it was too expensive. And nobody wants to pay $3,500 for a clunky, unsexy, stupid looking thing. So I don't know what they're doing. I think there's another argument to be made here that Apple is just experiencing a very difficult transition that a lot of companies experience, which is that they are moving from a growth company, from a young company. I mean, like Apple's been around for a while, but they're evaluated like a growth young company. I mean, their price to earnings ratio is, I think, still above 30, which is like their 10-year average price to earnings ratio is like 22. So they're like even more valued as a growth company than they have been historically over the last 10 years. And they're just not at that. We're at like a company like Ford, for example, like their price to earnings ratio is, I think, around 6. Okay, so that's like how a mature company's is priced in the stock market compared to what their actual revenue earnings are. And so this might be just a really, really difficult transition to Apple. I don't think they're going anywhere. Obviously, the iPhone is still works great. Sammie's bought one. I'm sure they're very grateful to her for her support. You know, them and Martin McDonough, they just love Sammie Purcell. And but anyway, I just think that this could be a shocking transition, because if they aren't able to deliver on the promise of sort of, we are the most cutting edge, we are the most creative company out there, they're not going to be. They can't be valued on the market the way they currently are.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see which I kind of assume F1 will do well in theaters, but after the whole kind of Wolf's debacle last year,
I know.
you know, like,
will they?
Yeah.
Will it?
I mean, it's what's the guy's name who did Maverick? Joseph Kosinski, I think. I mean, that is the type of movie with the type of sound that you want to see in a theater. It's got a big star. It's got Brad Pitt. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. I hope it does. I hope. Go ahead.
But are they gonna blow the rollout? Like, yes, this seems like such an obvious win. An F1 movie starring Brad Pitt with like high octane car races. Yeah. But if they don't execute the Mission Impossible blueprint in like rolling this out, you know, the like, you know, well, I'm trying to think of like other like really successful modern action like type fair.
I mean, they're like all Tom Cruise related. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
If they don't execute the Tom Cruise blueprint on this, I mean, they run the risk of just blowing it.
Yeah, and it's so weird because like, I was reading through this article, and obviously Severance kind of gets brought up a lot because it's not like Apple TV doesn't have hits. Like they've got Ted Lasso, they've got Shrinking, I think is doing pretty well. Like, and Severance is like one of the most popular television shows on right now. I'm not caught up, so no spoilers, but like I constantly see TikTok ads about Severance or like TikTok creators doing Severance sounds. I don't know what it's called on TikTok. I'm sorry. My disconnect is showing, but doing videos about doing videos about Severance, or like, talking about Severance theories, whatever it might be. Like on my TikTok feed, the two TV shows that are getting the most airtime are The White Lotus and Severance. So like obviously there's something there, and like Severance I think has the benefit of being good in my opinion. I'm not done with the second season, so no comment there, but I liked the first season. And like, but there are a lot of shows on Apple TV that I'm sure are good and are not getting like that kind of push. So they clearly have the ability to do it. So what's going on?
What's so weird is that Severance is arguably the most successful, innovative thing that Apple has going right now. I mean, their cloud business is doing very, very well, but like, who wants to talk about cloud revenue? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, so Severance is the best thing that Apple has going, and that's a problem for Apple, and that does make me very concerned about Apple TV Plus and what is it really doing for the company. It's been described by many as like a smokescreen to cover up the flaws that are happening across Apple and the failures of Apple's ability to deliver on some of its promises. I mean, the shuttered Apple car, comes to mind. But it's also just comes back to this sort of core issue of that, like, it's a problem that all the people that are really controlling Hollywood, the main money that's getting spent in Hollywood, is people that don't really care about movies and television shows. And they can pay people to make good ones, that's for sure. But is the love an essential part of like the marketing promise? And Apple, to me, seems to be sort of a case where it's like, yeah, it would really help if you guys like loved and prioritized your own shit as much as your fans do.
Right. Like, I feel like we've had such good examples, of marketing for movies in the past few years, weirdly. Like, I thought the Barbie marketing campaign was obviously everywhere. It was like very effective. The Wicked like press tour was very effective. The Longlegs marketing campaign, like making Micah Monroe wear that heartbeat thing, like that was super effective. Like, there are great examples of this type of thing everywhere. Not to bring up Survivor again, but I saw a great ad for Yellow Jackets the other day, because Survivor and Yellow Jackets are both on Paramount Plus, where it was like the Yellow Jackets girls were on Survivor and Jeff Probst was doing it, and it was very funny and very well done. And I'm like, let's get into this. Marketing can be an art form. Let's go.
And why is it not more cross-promoted on the devices that we are all beholden to? Like, it's so weird that I am still dealing with that stupid U2 album that is on every iPhone, and I encounter that fucking U2 album more than I do Severance on my Apple devices. This is crazy.
Right. Like, Mark's Innie should be a voice for Siri or something. I don't know.
Well, maybe if Siri worked better, that would be a viable alternative.
Right. Well, God, I was setting up my iPhone and I got to like pick my Siri voice, which I didn't like realize there were alternate versions of Siri, but they're so lame. Like, it's just like a guy. Like, I don't know. It was not very interesting.
Yeah, totally. What if I was your Siri voice? Would that be?
At least the voice have a little personality, Like, right now it's just like some dude. Like, it's probably not even real. But
oh no! If it was my voice though, you'd be watching some movie and you'd be like, "Hey Siri, like look up the IMDb credits of this movie." And I'd be like, "Really? That's the movie you're watching? Jesus Christ, Sammie!"
Listen, I have to watch so many movies. I have to watch a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's my job. But yeah. Are you going to take your daughter to see the new Snow White?
She's never watched the old one.
It's kind of scary, honestly. It really scared me as a kid.
Yeah, I think she's a little too young, but I'm actually like I haven't seen the new Snow White, but I'm optimistic about it, and I feel like the conversation has really come full around. Zegler stand up. This
Zegler's
woman has been,
good.
dude. That's what I'm hearing, and like, how could she not be? Like, Zegler
Yeah.
rocks. Anybody out? I'm not here for the Zegler hate. I love
Me
Rachel
neither.
Zegler. I hope she gets out of this Disney mess. They have scapegoated her. It is so unfortunate.
Yes.
I want to see her. I want to see her moving into art film. I want her finding some auteur directors. I will volunteer myself. She needs. But she needs to start doing some interesting shit because she is good. She is more than just like a try-hard theater kid. She is good.
She's awesome. I really, really like her. So I'm going to England for a friend's wedding in July, and it happens to coincide with Rachel Zegler, her run in Evita on the West End, and we're going. I am literally so excited. Yeah, I can't wait. But
I bet she'll crush.
I'm a huge Rachel Zegler stan, and she's good. The movie, it's not as bad as you would be led to believe, but it's not good. But she is really good. She is like, this is just something that I really was thinking about the whole time because she has to do it so much. She's so good at acting with things that are probably not there, like CGI animals and birds and dwarves. And it's just like, it has to be like theater training, just like being used to like making believe and being on stage and doing things that aren't, set in reality in any way. But I was really impressed with how good she was at doing that. And I hope she gets the opportunity to act with things that are there in a movie one day.
Yes. Free Zegler.
Yeah.
Free Zegler.
I have a feeling, I think she announced this Evita run like pretty close to this movie's release, and I have no inside information on this. I do not know Rachel Zegler. I would love to, but it felt very much as a like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. Thank you, goodbye. But
yeah, good, good for her.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our last. There we go. Sorry, my Google Doc went away. It's back. Let's move on to our last news item. So this is about Sundance. We're back talking about Sundance. This is an Indiewire article from Brian Welk, Ryan Latanzio, and Ann Thompson. As we all know, Sundance is sort of in the process of possibly finding a new city outside of Park City. So they've been in Park City for forever. But by 2027, they could be in a new city. And we've got 3 finalists. I think they could still go back to Park City. That's not out of the question. But the 3 finalists outside of Park City are Salt Lake City, so still in Utah, Boulder, Colorado, and Cincinnati, Ohio. A little bit of a outlier there. But this article is essentially kind of a rundown of those 3 cities' pitches. So Indiewire spoke with film commissioners from each of the 3 finalist cities and just kind of went through the pros and cons of having Sundance in any one of these 3 cities. So we can talk a little bit about those pros and cons as we go through this, but I wondered, do you have like a prediction? Like, are you feeling any type of way? Remember when I was optimistic about Atlanta? Wow. Sweet summer child.
Oh. Yeah, that was actually before we started podcasting, and from the first time you brought it up, I was like, "What are you talking about? You're crazy. They're never coming here."
Sorry, rose-colored glasses.
It's okay. Spoken like a true Green Knight fan. So anyway, I'm going to run through some of the pros and cons of these before I reveal my pick. I'm going to run through some pros and cons real quick. Okay, let's start. Salt Lake City, SLC. The pros got really, really big infrastructure. They are offering a $3.5 million incentive to come there. Cons, anti-LGBTQ laws, very red state. LDS is a little weird. So we got that. Cincinnati, pros, infrastructure, great chili. They can't stop talking about the chili. They actually don't mention chili at all in this article, somewhat conspicuously. It's affordable. They're offering a $2.5 million incentive. Cons, Central Time Zone, Midwest, Republican-leaning state of Ohio. And the last time I checked, it's still Cincinnati.
Kind of a tough. There's a really funny quote in here, kind of running down Cincinnati. Quote, Cincinnati's biggest challenge remains perception. One Sundance attendee told IndieWire they didn't like the idea of eating at the Cheesecake Factory after a world premiere. To which someone from Cincinnati replied, Ohio is not one big strip mall.
I mean, that's rich from a bunch of LA snobs shitting on somebody else's strip mall. Jesus Christ.
But it did make me laugh. I was like, come on,
it's
guys,
so funny.
like, be less elitist. But like,
it's so funny. But like so true to how these people think. Look, like the Sundance is a getaway for primarily Angelinos. Okay, so
sure.
They're going to be catering to their core audience. That is their core audience. That is the people that donate the money, that show up. That is that's the people they're catering to. Last but not least, Boulder, Colorado. The pros are it's a similar vibe to Park City. We got a small, cool, liberal town that is resort-esque. A little obviously much bigger than Park City and University of Colorado's there. They got Deion Sanders for at least for another year. The Buffaloes. So the cons is that we're an hour and a half in. We're getting a little goofy here. Okay, cons is that they only offered a $1.5 million incentive. Oh no. And it's a 45-minute drive from Denver, somewhat equatable to the drive to Park City from Salt Lake City. So pros and cons rundown. I got my pick. Sammie, do you have your pick?
So I think Boulder could be an interesting option. Like you said, it's a very similar vibe to Park City.
Wait,
it's a little big.
Is that your pick? Is that your pick, or is that it could be an interesting option?
That's my pick. That's my pick.
Oh, okay. You kind of were a little wishy-washy there.
Well, sorry, but that's my pick. So Boulder, like you said, is it's bigger. A lot of the rub on Park City is it's very small. Having been there, it is very tiny. And then Boulder, I think this is a really interesting point that the Indiewire article brought up. Again, it's been an hour and a half. I'm getting a little trippy, but Boulder is not a ski town, but it still has similar vibes. And I think like part of the pricing up of Sundance in that January time frame is the fact that it is ski season. So like it's going to be more expensive to be there. And Boulder's not a ski town, but still has like the snow, the west, sort of the mountainy vibes. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of good point by this IndieWire article. Also, Colorado is a blue state. Governor Jared Polis is the first non-incumbent openly gay man elected to Congress. So, it doesn't have kind of Utah's baggage. It doesn't have kind of the Ohio red baggage. Sorry, to jump back to the SLC part of this. There was a really, again, like just a quote that took me out. Hold on, let me find it. Senator Dan McKay, who's the sponsor of a flag ban bill in Utah, which is basically a bill to ban a bunch of flags from all school and government buildings, including the LGBTQ plus flag. He said, quote on social media, "Bye, Felicia. Sundance promotes porn. Sundance promotes alternative lifestyles. Sundance promotes anti-LDS themes. Sundance does not fit in Utah anymore," end quote. And I'm just sort of like, sir, this is a Wendy's. Like Sundance promotes porn. Wow, it's really strong there. Yeah. Okay, but
alternative lifestyles from a Mormon. This is a Mormon. Oh god.
But so, and I don't think Sundance has really made any. They haven't really commented on any of this really at all, like for obvious reasons. But it could, like, if that bill passes, like that could have an effect on if they want to stay in Utah or not. Like, who knows? But I think Boulder feels like a good sort of Park City adjacent type town that would perhaps be a little bit cheaper and a little bit bigger, and they wouldn't have to move so far out of their comfort zone.
Well, I think I actually disagree. I disagree with your pick. I feel that the true motives of what they are, of why they're moving, it all comes down to money. I think they want to expand the festival. We've talked about while Sundance was going on that they're sort of caught between the sort of like core mission of the festival, which is around discovery and like true indiness, and then these like massive entertainment conventions like South by Southwest that are able to generate a lot more cash. And they were looking at their architecture of the festival and seeing that they just couldn't possibly expand to that level. I think it's about money. And if there's anything that like the last year and a half has really demonstrated, is that when people are talking about large sums of money, they don't really care about sort of the same political issues that a lot of the participants care about. And they don't really care about some of the aesthetic issues that a lot of like people more concerned with the experience are about. So I think that they are going to go with Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is a beautiful town. It has a lot of really great stuff going for it. And even though it is in a very Mormon state and, has all these sort of weird conservative things about it, it's also, there's this really cool sort of alternative side that like pushes back against that Mormonness. So I think that they could highlight that sort of artist culture. I think ultimately it's just, for me, it comes down to just an Occam's razor decision. Like everybody is already trained to fly in and out of Salt Lake City to get to Sundance anyway. It's the festival has already been slowly coming down the mountain with events taking place in Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City provides just a much more familiar experience to everyone that has already been trained to go to Sundance. Nobody wants to relearn how to navigate a new commute to Boulder. Nobody certainly wants to figure out, how do I get to Cincinnati, Ohio from Los Angeles, from LAX airport?
Poor Cincinnati.
Well, hey, listen, they always have the chili. That's why I think it's going to be SLC. And I think that they know intrinsically that like anybody that sort of protests on political grounds is that they feel is insignificant to sort of the money that is on the table. And even on the Mormon side, if there's anything that Mormons do have, it's a lot of money. So I think that's what they're going to do.
You're not going to, no love for your girl, Christine Vachon, Cincy pick.
Oh, I love that she loves Cincinnati. No, listen, like...
I'm kidding.
I would love to go to Cincinnati.
I'm so glad they made it this far. It's so funny to me.
It's good for them. Good for them.
Yeah.
But listen, I just if they pick Cincinnati, I will be shocked. It will blow my mind.
That would be so funny. Can you imagine? I'm just like, I don't know. Having been in the vibes of Park City at that time, it would be so funny for it to be in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, it'd be great.
Amazing. Well, Sammie, this has been a wonderful episode. Longest episode I think we've ever done, but it's been really fun. If you enjoyed listening, please like, subscribe, rate, review. Hit us with the 5 stars. It really, really helps us out. I forgot to ask, do you have anything to plug, Sammie? You got anything coming up?
No, I don't think so. I'll be at the Backlight Student Film Festival in Athens on Saturday. If anyone listening is up there and wants to say hi. Yeah.
That's awesome. My friend Raina runs that.
Oh, awesome. I'll have to hit her up. You'll have to put us in contact. But
yeah, I will.
I'm really excited. I've been talking to a couple of student filmmakers over the past week or so, and it's been kind of nice to kind of get the love of cinema from the youth. It's been a really lovely experience, and I'm excited to kind of experience a student film festival up in Athens. It'll be fun.
Oh, so fun. That'll be awesome. Well, you'll have a great time. As always, I said last week, I'm playing the Warriors here at the Plaza on Thursday. So that'll be tomorrow for when this airs. So come out, Warriors on 35, 7:30 p.m. It's going to be great. In the meantime, Sammie, this has been lovely. And until next week, I will talk to you.
Talk to you soon. See you Thursday. I'll be there.
Whoop, whoop.